Alright, in this video we will see how to create CRUD operation with Mongoose, Express and Node.js. In case if you are starting MERN from start, this is the video I would recommend. Here we are not going to use React.js. We'll be just focusing on Express and MongoDB. Express will take care of routing, controller, and MongoDB is for the database. Now if you see, let me explain what this software does. So it's a simple CRUD operation. You just need to give a name and the email and click on save. You see the list got populated. In case if you want to edit, just click on edit, and once you click on edit, those fields name and email gets pre-filled. You'll be just renaming it and click on save again. Once you click on save, you see the data got updated, and in case if you want to delete this, you can simply click on the delete button and it's gone. So here we have seen how to create. So to create, we'll be just typing the name, the email. So this comes under create of CRUD, and then we'll look for read. Read is like when I refresh the page, you see you are able to read this information from the database. And on update, if I click on this edit, so I am going to update this name and email. If I click on save, it got updated, and in case if you want to delete it, you just have to click on delete. So this is the CRUD operation we are going to see. We'll be just using the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, MongoDB, Express and Node.js to do this CRUD operation. Now in this video you will see how to create this file structure professionally. We'll be using MVC, model, view and controller, and we'll do this folder structure in a professional way. We'll be creating everything from scratch, and also I won't be using any AI suggestion tool. I'll be creating everything by typing. There won't be any suggestion for this video because we want to understand how each syntax work, and I'll be explaining code line by line except HTML and CSS. I'll be writing JavaScript and the other pages code line by line without AI suggestion. Cool. Now we'll see how to install packages. We'll be creating server, we'll be using middleware, and we'll be creating schema for the database. We'll be creating routes and controller. We'll be displaying the HTML, and we'll do all the CRUD operation. So this is the topic that we are going to see today. Along with it, this is there still till get. So we'll be doing delete, update functionality as well. Now first thing, make sure your MongoDB is connected. Here we will see the clusters. In the clusters we will find browse collection, and in the browse collection you will find your this is my cluster, and let's create a new database and we will call it as SOCIETY, society, and collection name societies. Make sure to copy this name and click on create database. Also make sure your cluster is connected. There are cases your cluster will be not connected. In that case you'll see this button. You just have to click on this connect button so that your database is active, your MongoDB is active. Along with that, you need one more thing in MongoDB, which is get into this cluster and right click connect via, and here we need just click on the driver and get this string. You will be passing the username and password along with your database name, which I'll show you once I create .env. Enough with this MongoDB interface. Now we'll be focusing completely on the file structure. Let's create a new folder. I'm going to store it on desktop and I'm going to call it as society, or just say db. Select folder. Now this folder will be blank for now. Now we need to install Node in this, so control backtick to open your terminal, and over here what we have to type is, let me just have this over here so it doesn't disturb anyone, npm init, which will create a package.json file for now. And once this is done, we would be installing all the dependency packages, and you see your package.json is ready. And what we need is, we need npm install Mongoose, then Express, these are package names, and Mongoose Express, and we need .env, and then we need node.mon. Click enter. These 4 packages, once it got installed, you will see the new object called dependencies, and these dependency will have all the version number of the package that we have installed. So we have 4 packages installed for this application. Now in this file you will see the main key and value. So this is the entry point. We'll name it as server. Every node application should have an entry point, and we will call it as server.js. For this application, server.js is the entry point. Now here we need to create a server or run a server. To run server we need Express, so we need the package Express, and we'll create the instance of the package require, and this is how we call package. And what is the package name? It's Express. With this package we are creating the instance, and with this instance we need to create another instance called app from this function, and with this instance we'll be able to start the server app.listen, and the port number we have to pass, I'm just simply call it as 3000. And over here with this callback function we'll be just displaying console.log as server running. Now to run this server, to run this application, what we need to do is, we need to get into the terminal and type npm node and the file name node and the entry point of this application. The entry point of this application is server.js. If you click enter, you'll see your server is running. I want to check this in the browser. For that we will create a simple route with the app instance app.get. It's simply a get request. Whenever someone hits localhost :3000, so that is what this slash means. Whenever someone hits localhost :3000 is the port number, and the server will accept the request, the server will send the response, and this is a callback function that is responsible for giving the response, getting the response, and sending the response from the server. And we will send the response with this send function, and we just simply say hello from server.js. So we can get into the browser, make sure your server is running. It should not, we need to close this server, we need to kill this server, and write the code again to check the changes. So localhost :3000 will say hello from server.js. If I want to change this text, and if I save it and refresh the server, it won't work. I have to kill the server again by pressing Ctrl C and then calling this node server.js, and this will run the server again, so that I can see the changes again, changes that I have made to reflect on the browser screen. So each time I have to kill the server and restart it. So to solve this problem, we have a package called node.mon. So we have to, so before that let me just explain you how this command is going to work. Let me just close this server, running server, and if I type npm run, I'll just run the script. So this text. So what it should do, it says it will simply execute this line of code. If I run npm run the test, it will simply run this line of code. What is the line of code? Echo error no test specified. So this is the line of code that got executed. Likewise, I want one more script. I'll say start, and whenever I type npm run start, what should happen? It should simply say node space server dot js. So which is what we were typing manually to run the server. So to run again, I'll just simply we can do two things. Node server dot js, you can simply write this, or simply you can write npm run, then this line of code which is start. So if you click enter, you'll see the server will run again, but this is not I want. So to change every time, if I make some changes and if I refresh the page, it won't show up until I close this and rerun it again. So I have rerun it. Now you'll see the changes. I don't want this kind of work, so instead we'll be writing one more script and we'll call it as dev. You can name it anything, but the command that I would be doing is node-mon server.js. Now what this package will do is, make sure you are npm run dev. So dev is simply this script I am talking about. If I click enter, so it says there is some error. It's because of this extra clear. So npm run dev. So if I run this code again, control C, clear, npm run dev, on every time I save, you see the server will restart again. I'm pressing Ctrl S again, you see server got restarted. Ctrl S, Ctrl S. So the reason is, if I make some changes and press save, I don't have to restart the server, so it will do it for me on each Ctrl S. Ctrl S, refresh it, you see the changes. So that's why we need node-mon. So that's a simple and straightforward explanation of that particular package. Now let's use env. So before writing or knowing about env, your server.js, which is your entry point of the node application, should follow some kind of structure so that your code doesn't get mess. So your server.js may have 100-200 lines of code. So to group them, we have a convention that we have to follow. So for the first section, we will have config related code, and the next part would be connection related code, and the third part would be middleware, and after middleware we will have routes, and then we will have server running, and this will come here, and this is the route. Now we'll be working on .env. So we have already installed the package .env. Now we need to simply call a file, and we'll call it as .env. It's an environment variable. Now if I type port and make this as 3000, I can simply call this port on the server.js with this process.env.port. Now to run this, to initialize the .env file in this server.js, you have to call the package which is .env, and I'll just create an instance of it. And this isn't enough, we need to call config function to make this work. Now you see, if I press Ctrl S, your code will work as it is, because the port has been called from this particular file, so it's working that as we thought. Now the next thing is we need to create database. So database is already created, but we need to give a structure to it. To create structure, we would be creating a folder called model. Inside we will have user, or yeah, you can simply make it as user model.js. Now since we are going to connect our application, Node.js application, to the MongoDB, we need a package called Mongoose. Let me create a constance. Let me create a instance of Mongoose. So we will simply say require, and it would have Mongoose. And now we need to create a schema. To create schema, we need to call this function. It would accept, we can store it saying that user schema. So it's an reference. Now we need the property. I need name. It should be of type of what, string, and then required is true. It's a boolean variable, so quotes is not required. Likewise, I'm going to say one more field, which is we can have email. Email is another field. Now this is enough for simple CRUD operation. Now what I need to do is I need to, so whenever you create unique file for any kind of application, for any kind of function, that function has to be exported. So you have to keep this in mind. Whenever we create a file, that file will definitely have a function, and that function has to be exported so that we can import it somewhere. Here we would be exporting this particular file, sorry, this particular function, which is user schema, and we need to export it with module dot export, and then we will be calling Mongoose instance, and we need to pass the database name, or sorry, the collection name, which we have named it as societies, SOCIETIES, and the schema that this particular collection should follow, which is user schema. Now your schema is ready, but we haven't connected our database. So to connect our database, we need a new folder, and we'll call it as config, and inside config we will simply have dv.js, and this dv.js is responsible for connecting your Express application or Node.js application to the MongoDB. Now again, this is related to database, so Mongoose is required, and from the package Mongoose. Now this function, this file will have a function called connect db, and whenever we do connection with the database, it should be asynchronous function, and when asynchronous function should always work with try and catch. And now with the instance, we can connect mongoose dot connect. We need to pass the URL, and since we have used async, this should be await. And once the connection is done, we should simply console log saying that db connected. Now coming back to this URL, this URL is actually the URL which we got from the MongoDB. We have to add it over here. So let me call it from my previous application. So this has to be kept secret. So for tutorial purpose, I'm just showing it, but after the tutorial ends, I'll be changing this password. And this is the place where we need to change our database name. I have named it as society, SOCIETY. That is enough. Now we need to use this Mongo URL on this db.js. So we need to connect the .env file, that the process we already know. So to call the variable from env, we need to follow this structure, process.env whatever the variable name, and then we need to call the package .env, create an instance, or simply chain it with config function. So this is called function chaining in JavaScript. And if there is any error, we can simply log it, console.log. I will call it as error.message. And definitely we need to, as said earlier, your particular file will definitely have a function, and that function has to be exported, module.exports, and then we need to send this. So when we are sending we are exporting the function, we can call it in the server.js. So for that we need to properly call config, and inside config we have db.js, it's small db, and it's going to be connect db, and all the connection related should come under here. And if I refresh the page or control S, server running and db got connected. So that means your database is connected. The next step would be creating an HTML. So to create an HTML, we need to create a folder called public, and I think public is placed inside model. It should not be like that. It should be in the parent folder, and we'll call it as public. Inside public we need index.html. Now to call this index.html from the server.js, you need a package called path. Let's create an instance of path, and here instead of send you need a function called send file, and with the help of path has a function called join. We need to pass the directory, which is the absolute path of your Node.js application, and where your HTML folder is, it's inside public folder, and what is the file that you want to call, so it's index.html. Whenever I type localhost :3000, you should see the data from the HTML. It's blank, that's why. So we can say h1 hello from index.html. Make a refresh, you'll see hello from index.html, because this basic route is sending the index.html from the public folder. Now we need to set a middleware. Why do we need a middleware? Because if we create a new file here and call it as style.css, and we'll give a style and make the background as red, and I'll connect the style.css in the head, and I'll call it as style.css, and if you hit the URL, you will never see the CSS getting attached. The server.js will simply send the index.html, but your application does not know where its attached file. Index.html has an attachment file which is style.css and script.js. Your application don't know. Now we want to make this application know that whenever you call a HTML file, check for the public folder whether its related file is there or not. So for that we would be creating a middleware, calling the middleware. So whenever you see app.use, it's actually a middleware code, and here now we need to call a middleware which is from the Express. From the Express package you have a function called static, and you need to give the path. So we can copy this. So this is going to be the base path. We don't need index.html. So whenever the index.html is called, its supporting files has to be in its supporting file inside the public folder. It is what this middleware says. Now if I refresh it, you'll see the style got linked properly. That's how we create public folder and we place HTML inside it. The next thing is we will see how to create a routes. So we'll create a routes folder, and inside routes folder we will have a function called user routes.js, and we need a function called router that is inside the package called Express. So we'll call the Express, create an instance of Express, and we will call the package, and inside the package we need the package called Express, and this instance can call now router, and let's create the instance of router as well. Now with this function we can make use of one thing. So I just want you to understand, whenever you create an application, this application will be module based. So for this, consider this website is about a department, and in department you will have the information related to users, or you can say employees, the and you will have the information about managers, and you will have information about the expenses. So all the module, let's say employee, and then we have managers, then we have expenses. So each of them will have their CRUD operation of their own. So it is recommended to create each of them one route. So employees will have one route, manager will have one route, expenses will have one route. So here this is a single application, we'll be just storing the information about users, so we need one route. So this particular route will simply take care of CRUD operation. When I say CRUD operation nothing but CRUD. So create CRUD. C stands the method responsible for creating any resources get. The method responsible for, sorry, the it's not create, for create is going to be post. The method which is responsible for viewing your data from database is get. The method is responsible to update the value in the database is put. The method which is responsible to delete is delete. So these function would be called as a method, and we will be having a callback function, a request and response, and I'll just simply send the response and show you hello from HTML. So it's not HTML, hello from routes. Now we need to, as said, it's an individual file, we need to do module.exports, and what we have to export our router. Now we have to call it in the entry point, and routes, we have user routes, and we need to create the instance user routes. Now this should be a middleware. Your router should be a middleware. Whenever we are going to use middleware, app.use is the one, and whenever someone search for user, I want this route to take care of it. Similarly, like the example that I have given, whenever someone searches for, second one is employee or the manager or the expense, so we will simply type here user or manager or employee. So based on that, your route would be called. If I click enter, you will see hello from routes. So it's actually a get request, that's why. So if you change it to society, now it won't work. You have to simply call it society. In that case it would work. So let's keep it user as well for easy understanding. Now this is not the right way to send response from the router. Usually the response will be coming from controller. So the steps are like, user, you will be typing some URL and hitting enter. Once you hit enter, Express application will search routes folder, and then it will go into controller folder, and then it will find the relevant function. So this is the flow that your Express application will do. Now let's create a new. So again I'm saying, when you hit any URL, the Node.js will look for routes folder, and then it will look for controller folder for the function, and then it will look for model. So this is how the flow is. So the request is sent in this way. First it will check the routes will have the controller function, and the function will interact with the database, and then as a response, so this is how request is sent, and how response will send. It will be from the model, it will send to controller, and then it will send to routes. So this is how the request and response cycle is. Now what we need, now this router, this routes has to send the request to the controller. So in that case, we'll be creating a folder called controller, and inside controller we'll be creating user controller.js, and simply we'll create a one function, exports dot get users, or what you can do is you can simply copy the whole thing and call it over here. Now the router has to send the request to the controller. How are we going to do that? Let's create the instance of controller first, const user controller, and we require the file from where you have to come one step up, then you will find controller, and then you will find user controller. Now this user controller file has a function called get user. Now this is responsible, this get, the route will send the request to the controller, and the controller has to find the function get user which is there, and it should say hello from controller. Make a refresh, you should see, let me check what is the error is. So it should be user, we have named it, but I have kept it. Now you see hello from controller. So this is how the flow is, and we have sent the request from the controller. So now let's add the HTML and work on CRUD operation. So let me just copy the HTML which I have already used. Let's take it from student.db public HTML, copy the whole thing and paste it in the HTML. Same way, let's copy the CSS as well. I'll be creating the JavaScript from scratch, and if I refresh, this is the basic HTML. Let me just show you what are the things that is required. Now the thing that is required is we have a form with name and class. Similarly, we have email, the name attribute and the class attribute, and then we have a ID with div, so div with ID result, and then we have a table row. This is the place where we will be populating the value from the database and displaying it. And then this is the script tag. I have not created the script yet. Let me create script.js. This is the place where we will be writing all our JS code, JS related code. Now let me just remove all the not needed file. Server.js is required. Now first thing what we need, if I make a refresh, so let me open the console as well on the side. When I click on save, what should happen? The data should be sent to the route, which is user, and since the route in the script.js, the user route is handled by the file called user routes, and this is what this is the let's create a post. Post means when I click save, the data should get saved. So post method, and the data that is responsible, the function that is responsible is create user. Now whenever I click on save button, the route will pass the request to the controller. So here the controller should have the function create user. Now we have to send the request from the JavaScript. How are we going to do it? So let me first call the form using document dot query selector, and let's call the name input, the class, the email HTML, and when someone submits the form, the event that would be triggered is submit, and the callback function. When I click on submit, the page would get loaded. To stop loading, we will be using e.prevent default function, and then we'll create a object called form data, and we will store the name value, the input field value, and store it into the attribute, the key name, and this is the key email. And what I need, when I click on submit, I simply console.log form data. Make sure to add comma. If I type Vishal and vishal@gmail.com, click on save, you should see the object, which is what we have created. Now we need to send this object to the server so that the controller can access the request. So I want the request to be sent from the JavaScript file to the server so that I can handle it on this function. Now to send data, what we need to do is we need to write fetch query, and we know the endpoint is user, so let's create a new variable endpoint, and we'll just say localhost colon 3000 / user. So this is going to be the endpoint, because all the CRUD related method is written on this particular router, so this again will send it to the controller, and controller will talk to the database, and you know the flow which I have said, request response cycle. Now the first parameter is endpoint, and the second parameter is data that you want to send. So we would be sending it in with three items. The first item is what method. The method is post, and you need to pass what type of content you are sending. So we would be sending the content type as what, at application /JSON. So there are many ways to send data. One such and most commonly used way is application /JSON. The second most used is application multipart, multipart / form data, and the third type is URL encoded. Now we have sent what type of data that we are sending, and then we need to say what data are we sending. So on the body we would be saying JSON dot stringify is required, I'll say, and what are we sending? Form data we are going to send. JSON dot stringify is required because your JavaScript object, this is actually a JavaScript object, your JavaScript object cannot be sent from your browser to the server. To send your JavaScript object, we need to convert it into a text format. That text format is called JSON, and your JavaScript object will be converted into JSON so that we can send it from your browser to the server. That's why JSON.stringify is there. Now let's check whether we are able to send the name and email. So we can check it on the network tab. So name and email, click on save. I don't think we are able to send. So it's the typo error. It should be application hyphen content, sorry, content hyphen type. Let's try again. Check the source, sorry, network, the name, the email, submit. So now in the user, in the payload, we are able to send name and email. You won't be getting any response because we haven't written. Now there is one thing to send the data, and to make this work we need one router, sorry, one middleware, and that middleware is app.use Express.js. This should come on top. Sequence is important. Now once we send the data, we have to accept it. So here request.body dot name, we can store it into a variable name const, and then we have email, we can access the email over here. Now to save, we can simply do one thing, which is we'll create an object const form data. We'll simply create an object and then we will call the model so that we can save our data. To call model, const user u capital require one level up, then model, then user model. Now since we are using connection to connect, since we are connecting it with a database, all the functions should be asynchronous. Async, we should use try catch, console.log error.message. Then to connect, we need user.create, or simply what we can do is we'll create a new object, new user. We will be passing the form data, and we'll create an instance new user, and then we will save it, dot save. It's an async, and if everything goes well, we'll send the response with status. Since we have created a resource, it's 201, and we will send as an object message colon data saved. Now this response, we will access it as a promise. First we have to convert it into JSON, sorry, into JavaScript object with the function response.json. This will convert the JSON into JavaScript object, and then we can access the JavaScript object. I'm sorry, it's a round bracket. Data, and we'll be getting message data.message, and we will be displaying it in the result div with id result div, and we will call this over here result div dot inner html, and this data will have message attribute which we have set would get displayed, and then we want the form should unset. The form input field should get blank, so for that reset function is required. Now let's try. I think there's an error, the crash Mongoose societies. So yes, in the model it says there's an error. It's mongoose dot model. Yes, now the server would run. Let's send some value and click save, and you see the status as 201. That means we have received the data got saved, and we have received the object data saved, and it is getting displayed over here. Let me check MongoDB. So in the societies table you see it got saved. Let me try refresh it. It's not res, it's reset. Let's try one more. Click on save, and you see 201. That means data got saved. Let's refresh it. The form.reset is not working. I don't know why. Let's check it later on. So you can see UI monk also got saved. Now the next thing is, when let's try run or test at gmail.com. click on save. Yes, it's gone. Now what I need is, we need to fetch the value and display it over here. So for that, let's create a let's call a function. We'll be creating display data, and this display data will simply send the fetch request. So fetch endpoint. Once this is sent, so you will see if I refresh the page. So let's just call on page load as well. On page load, you should see a request that has to be sent. So I had to take this down. So if I refresh, you'll see the data is sent to the routes, and route get is actually sending, get user is actually sending hello from controller. Now we need to fetch the value. To fetch value, again we'll be using try catch, and this should be async function, and here we'll be simply calling user all data, create a constant variable, and simply call the model and use the function find, and we need to send this 200 status and send this as a JavaScript object, and it will be later converted into JSON. Now we will have this data as a promise. Now we need to convert it into JavaScript object with this function. What is the name? All data. Response.json, and then this just was response.json will return JavaScript object as datas, and it will be a collection. It will be a collection of objects. So for that, I'll be using for each datas dot for each, and then we can access one object at the time, obj, or you can simply call data, and here we'll create make HTML and we'll pass the data over here, and let's define the make HTML, and here we will call table row table body tables t body, so that we can append table t body, and it's t body HTML, and we will call this t body HTML and append it. Don't forget plus, or else it won't, you'll only see one value, one table row, and call the whole table row and display it over here, and this data now access to user has to access to email, and we'll create an ID, and we will say a row hyphen, this will have ID also, we will call that ID underscore ID. You see, we can access this ID and we will have it in the table row, and once this is set, once you receive data from the server, if I refresh it, this user is actually not getting anything. Let me check, it could be async or await problem. Now in the controller we have async, and this should be await. User has got 200. Now the server is sending these values, all data. Now in the script.js, let's see whether this is able to console.log. we'll be having one by one. Refresh. In the console, assignment to a constant variable, assign to a constant variable make HTML. Oh yes, we have made it as const, it should be let. So you are able to properly retrieve it, and this is working, it is working till here. Now this make HTML, let's just do this console log one more time over here to check. Yes, it is also working. Now here this tbody is making the problem, it should be tbody.inner HTML, and now you see the data got populated. Also the data which was there already, let me just comment this, refresh it. So now you see the fetch is also working. So let's try one more thing, ron@gmail.com, click on save. You see Ron is also there, but I have given name, I think in the HTML it's user, that's why it's not able to properly fetch the name. Now you see the name is also got fetched. So your create is working, your edit is your create and get is working. Now we'll do the easy one, which is the delete. So we will pass on click a function, and we'll call it as delete data, and we need to pass the ID, and it's better to be inside single quotes. We can pass this ID over here, and let's see whether we are able to fetch it. If I hover it, you should see on click. Let's initialize this. We would be having ID as a parameter, or we'll simply say console.log. When I click it, I want to log the ID, so I am able to fetch the ID. Now let's send this ID to the server. So how are we going to do it? Fetch endpoint. We would be passing a method, and the method is going to be delete. And the next thing is what type of content you are sending. So headers, it's going to be content hyphen type colon application.json is going to be JSON data, and what data you're going to send, it should be inside body, and we need to convert it into JSON. So for that, JSON dot stringify, and we need to pass our object. We don't have any object yet, so let's create an object, del id, and id colon id. So this is the object that we have created, and we will be passing this del id here, and we can access the del id in the controller. So before that, we have to create a dedicated method delete, and which function is responsible? Delete function is responsible to handle the request exports dot. We'll be receiving the request, we'll be sending the response through this callback function, and we can access request dot body. We can access the ID over here. So let's check console, or we can say rest dot send response dot request dot body, and if I click, you should get the response in the network tab. Delete. On the response, you got the ID. Now we can call this ID, and we have a function. So again, it says we are interacting with the database. It should be ASY, asynchronous function, and we'll be using find by ID and delete, and we need to pass the ID, and it's user dot. We have to use await because it's an asynchronous function, and if everything goes well, we can simply pass the object calling as message, and the value is deleted successfully. Now we can access this as a promise. First, we need to convert it into JavaScript object, because we'll be receiving the JSON response dot JSON, and this will again send our object data, data, and again we can display it in the HTML like how we have displayed it over here. Call the result div and populate the message. If I refresh it, I'm going to delete the test, and it says data deleted successfully. Test is still there. If I refresh, Ctrl F, so test is gone. So let's try one more time. Run. Again it says undefined. Why it's saying undefined? Let's check. Then we are able to result it. So let's check the result. Message, I think it's capital M. Yes, that could be the issue. So let's delete UI monk. It says deleted successfully. After deleting, I want to run this get or the fetch get API, so that delete it, so it immediately gets deleted. I think it's not getting deleted again, so it's properly getting added. But before adding, what should happen is your table data should get erased. So when you call display data, let the inner HTML gets erased. Refresh. And another problem is, let the display data be inside the response. Let's try the second one. If I click delete, it's gone. This is also gone. So it's working as we thought. This is first, this is second. Let's ron@gmail.com. Click on save, and it got saved. Yes. Now it's time to work on edit. Edit is little complicated, but I'll try to simplify it. Now we need to create a blank object, const edit id. It's a blank object, and whenever someone clicks on the edit button, we'll simply call it as edit data, and let's initialize it. We will be having id as a argument, and then with this argument we need to get the document.query selector, because we have given the name as a row. So let me just show you each tr as an id. It's an id, and id hyphen row hyphen id. So this is how you see row hyphen the id. So I would be calling this, and this is actually our tr HTML. And once we have this HTML, we can use the property cells. 0 is for first row, and we need inner text, and we will save this value in the name input field, and this one is email input field, and this is 1. Refresh it, and if I click on edit, you see the value is getting properly populated. Cell 0 and cell 1, so this is first row, this is second row, 0 and 1. Cool. And then if I click on submit, along with this edit data, what I want to do is I want to edit this object, edit data equal to, and we will store id. Now this id is not blank, so when I refresh the page, the edit id is blank, but when I click on edit, Now if I click on edit, I think there's an error. Assignment to a constant, it should not be constant, it should be let. On page load it's blank, but when I click on edit it's not blank now. So now when I click on save, I need to do a, now we need to check if our edit, so this is an object. To check we need to use object dot keys and pass the edit. If the length is greater than 0, that means it's not blank. If it's not blank, then we need to do the update query. If it is blank, then it's a fresh start. Then in that case we'll be just using the code for create. We have to do the same thing, but this time it is going to be put along with that. We need to send the form data with the ID. So we need to send the form data and we need to pass the ID colon get the edit ID dot ID. Now let's try to check whether we are able to properly send the object with these 3 values. Click on edit, there's an error. If it doesn't have any error, then okay, you should click on this submit, and in the payload you should see, yeah, you're able to send the ID also. Now we need the relevant route to take care of that method, which is put, and the function is update user. Now we can create the function update user. So here it's update user, since again it said it's going to be a try catch block. I haven't used try catch here, but we have to use try catch. Let's call it try catch. And now we need to access the value that we have sent. How are we going to send it? How are we going to receive it? Request dot body, and we can destructure it this way. We have ID, we have name, we have email. Now we have 3 variables filled. Now what we need to do? Now we need to write, we need to call the model, and we have a function find and update by find by ID, find by ID and update. The first parameter is ID, the second parameter is what are the values that you want to send. I want to update name and email, and the third argument is new true. If you say new true, that means the new value that got updated will be returned. If you say new false, the previous value before updation, how the object was, it would get returned. And then we need to send the response as an object, and I think here we can see, I don't know what status it is, while we can skip it, and we'll say updated data updated as a message. Click on edit, and let's make this UI monk 2 and click on save. What data that we got as a preview, data updated, and after data updated in the script, this is put result form display data. One such problem is it should be await. Let's try UI monk 2, click on save. Yes, it is getting updated. Click on edit. It's Ronald, and the creation is done. And if I refresh the page, the read is also done. And then if I click on update, so Vishal update is also done. And if I click on delete is also done. So the CRUD operation is completely done. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for listening.